for us. It's easier to follow if we have a hard copy. My first question, when would you provide and table in the House the report from the Independent Fiscal Commission, which it was tabled?
No, they are supposed to.
They have provided a report. It's normally sent directly to the Parliament and then tabled here, which would affirm the suspension of the fiscal rules. So it has been sent to the House, because that information is important for certainly the PAAC and for us as an independent body to assess the information in the supplementary budget.
The report and the order.
All right. Well, you can, when you respond, you can give me that detail.
It's not this question.
Okay. So so I'm asking for that to be tabled. You went into the debt to GDP projections for the next 4 to 5 years. Were these projections done prior to the announcement of the package of $6.7 billion US dollars? And if so, will you have to revise these based on the details of the loan grants, etc., which will be worked out? Can you indicate to the House when you'll be able to come back to the House to give us details of the $6.7 billion US dollar program, which was announced by the IFIs yesterday? Because it is difficult to have an informed discussion about the debts without knowing those details, without knowing whether there are moratoria on the loans, what the repayment periods are, etc. So if you can give me a time frame for that. And you mentioned growth-inducing capital expenditure. What is the government going to do differently now from what it has done over the last 4 to 5 fiscal years, where we have underspent our capital budget by significant amounts? We have had to reallocate the capital budget for recurrent expenditure and many other different things. So what is going to be different in this environment so that we can actually spend the very limited capital budget, which generally is only about, from central government, 5% of the overall budget, and if you add the public bodies, another 5%. So it would be important to understand what we will be doing differently to ensure that we spend the money so that we can achieve the economic growth that you project. You mentioned that the Independent Fiscal Commission projected a 5.3% GDP fall. Is that for this year only? And what is the projection for the next 3 or 4 fiscal years? Again, that's why it's important for us to have sight of that report from the Independent Fiscal Commission. And we recognize that this budget, the supplementary, is, given the circumstances, not the normal run-of-the-mill supplementary. And as such, for us to be able to properly analyze it, we would need all that data, and certainly PAAC, which is meeting tomorrow, would benefit from that information for that informed analysis. Thank you.
And next, the opposition leader, and after that, the member from Portland Eastern. And then...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My understanding is that this is a motion.
Yeah, it is.
And we're debating a motion.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Minister, it really would have been helpful if you had circulated a copy of your presentation to us, because there is a lot of detail and important information in it. And it's much easier to follow and respond to that if we have it in writing. So I'm hoping that that will be done. Minister, first of all, when we're discussing the disaster risk financing framework, I think it's important to recognize the work of others who helped to put that in place. In particular, I want to acknowledge the work, the seminal work that was done by then Minister of Finance, Dr. Omar Davies, in the development of the CRIF as a Caribbean model, a regional model of parametric insurance, which has, we have been able to benefit on this occasion by some over 90 million US dollars. So I think it's important, and I want to put that on the record of the House, because sometimes those contributions tend to be overlooked. Madam Speaker, we have a fiscal policy paper here, which I look forward to reading. But just on a quick glance at the content of it in relation to the public debt stock, clearly it was prepared in advance of what was announced yesterday by the multilaterals and that very large financing package which Jamaica is being offered of $6.7 billion US dollars. The projections in the fiscal policy paper, therefore, I assume are predicated on the state of things which existed before that financing became available. And so I join and endorse what the shadow spokesman for finance has said as to the need to see updated projections around those debt to GDP numbers and indeed our growth numbers, given the additional resources that will be taken on board to finance the recovery. Madam Speaker, you haven't mentioned anything about amending the Financial Administration and Audit Act so as to push back the target date for the debt to GDP ratio to be achieved. The projections you have here indicate that it will not be achieved by the target date of 2028 March, which we understand. But suspending the fiscal rule is one thing, and moving the target date for achieving the desired ceiling on debt is another thing. So you need to tell us when you plan to deal with that. Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that the report that the PIOJ and the Fiscal Commissioner, I believe it is, has prepared, which is a basis for the order that you're seeking to bring here for approval to suspend the fiscal rules, be made available to us so that we can understand the background of this request. Obviously, we're aware in general terms of the background because we are fully aware of the mayhem caused. But it would be good to see the technical analysis and the supporting analysis that has taken place by those persons entrusted by our law for the recommendation that the necessary parameters have been met to justify a suspension of the fiscal rules. And I hope in the interest of transparency and good governance that we will see those documents. Madam Speaker, as I have indicated earlier, we are going into a new era where Jamaica has this massive recovery to finance and is taking on a huge financing package to do this. That financing package is largely debt financing, preponderantly so. The Prime Minister indicated that there are shovel-ready projects, or at least approved projects, in the pipeline that private sector investors can get behind and that would be supported by the private sector financing bodies that are affiliated with the World Bank and I think the IDB. And that's fine, but the actual investors who are going to take the risk of making those investments have to be identified. And that is why I'm saying that $2.4 billion is not assured. And we want to hear more about what projects and what investors are going to be coming to the table to undertake those projects and make sure that that component of the $6.7 billion is in fact real. So, Madam Speaker, there's a lot that remains to be explained to us. We don't know any of the terms of this proposed borrowing, the interest rates, the tenures of the loans, any moratoria on interest and principal. From the numbers that were tabled today in the supplementary budget, I can see that certain interest expenses are not going to be incurred. So I assume that means that those multilateral lenders have agreed to suspend the obligation to pay during this period. I'd like to know for how long that suspension is going to last. I don't think that Jamaica has natural disaster clauses in any of our borrowings. I'm not aware of that. That has been pioneered by Barbados in their bond offerings, and I believe Grenada also took advantage of that where an event of a calamity of this nature caused by some natural disaster takes place, there's a period of suspension of debt payments for the duration of the effect of the disaster on an objective basis. And of course, that releases significant cash flow to help fund the country through that period. I don't think we have that formally in our certainly in our bond documentation. I don't know whether there are any public sector borrowings from multilaterals that have it, but even if there aren't, from what I'm seeing in the supplementary estimates, the multilaterals have agreed to suspend some of their payments, because we're seeing savings on interest payments in the supplementary budget from the multilaterals. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about that as well. So, Madam Speaker, I look forward to more information on this proposed order to suspend the fiscal rules in the interest of transparency and good governance. Thank you.
Before you is the member